Hi all. So last month we saw the circular by CBSE which said that this year the board exams are going to be conducted twice. One testing you only on term 1 syllabus and the second board exam testing you on term 2 syllabus. We also saw a bifurcation of syllabus, and for mathematics in particular, the term 1 syllabus consisted of 8 chapters. These chapters were real numbers, polynomials, linear equations, triangles, coordinate geometry, introduction to trigonometry, areas related to circles, and probability. Deleted portions also was there, which means the portions were simplified a great deal. So if you look at real numbers, you didn't have that part about Euclid's division lemma, or you did not have proof of irrationality. Similarly, polynomials, you only had to learn about zeros of a polynomial and about the relationship between coefficients of a quadratic polynomial, right? And if you see the pair of linear equations, cross multiplication method is not there. In coordinate geometry, area of triangle is not there. Complementary angles not there in introduction to trigonometry. So the portions looked quite simple. And the format which was announced to us last month was MCQs only of 40 marks to be attempted in 90 minutes. 90 minutes means 1.5 hours. So it seemed to us then that, okay, the paper would have 40 questions and there might be internal choice in some of the questions. Mark distribution also was given for these chapters. These 10 marks here are for both these chapters together for the unit algebra. So 10 marks for polynomials and pair of linear equations together. And all these other marks are for these individual chapters respectively, which was mentioned. Now the sample paper got released 3 days back. And there's a surprise factor in that sample paper. Now, what exactly is the new pattern which has been decided by CBSE? We expected here that the paper would be of 40 questions, right? But no, according to the CBSE sample paper, the board exam would have 50 questions and you just need to attempt 40 questions out of these 50 questions. Yes, so total 50 questions, but the marks is what? 40 marks. Now, this 50 questions have been divided into 3 sections: Section A, Section B, Section C. Section A will have 20 questions, but it is worth 16 marks only. That means you will be attempting only 16 questions from these 20 questions. Same thing for Section B. Section B has 20 questions, but you have to attempt only 16 marks worth of questions from these 20 questions. Section C has 10 questions, and in these 10 questions, you have to attempt any 8. So 16 plus 16 plus 8, you have got 40 marks there. 40 questions to be attempted out of a total of 50 questions. So there's no choice between questions. It is not either this question or that question which you need to attempt. You have flexibility in selecting which questions you want to do, provided it is 16 from the first section, 16 from the section B, and then 10 questions from section C. Now, if you're looking at these individual sections, section A, what I found were the easy type questions. Section B are of a little higher difficulty as compared to section A. So this is a little higher difficulty questions. And section C was purely case studies. You had 2 case studies over here in section C. That is the format of the paper. And I actually, before making this video, attempted the standard paper on my own. I attempted it fully, completely. I wanted to see how much time it would take me as a maths teacher who has been teaching for almost 10 years now, how much time it would take me to solve all 50 questions. For me to solve all 50 questions, writing the steps, it took me 1 hour 15 minutes. It took me 1 hour 15 minutes. The time limit of the paper is 90 minutes for 40 questions. I attempted all 50 and I did it in 1 hour 15 minutes. But what I saw was, if you're conceptually very clear, if your concepts are very, very clear in all of the chapters, this paper is very easy to do, very easy to get the 40 marks. if you're conceptually not very good and if your speed is not good, then it can affect your chances of getting good marks. Okay, let us see how the distribution of questions was for the basic paper and standard paper across all the chapters. So if you look at section A, which were the easier questions, this was the distribution of questions for the basic paper and the standard paper. If you look at the basic paper for real numbers, you had 5 questions. Now, this is very good because real numbers is one of the easiest chapters, I would say, as far as this year's syllabus goes, because you are only having the part of LCM, HCF, and you have the part where you have to check whether the decimal representation of the rational number would be terminating or non-terminating repeating. So only these 2 portions are there. And very easily you can secure these 5 marks or 4 marks in the basic or standard paper. From chapter polynomials in section A, only 1 question was there in the basic paper. Linear equations both had the same number of questions. So you had 3 questions for both basic and standard. If you look at triangles, the basic paper had lesser number of questions as compared to standard paper. Standard paper had more number of triangles questions in section A, which means mostly it was the easier questions which came in standard paper from triangles. And coordinate geometry, 2 questions in basic, 1 in standard. Introduction to trigonometry, 3 questions from basic, 4 in standard. Areas related to circles both had 1 each. Probability, there were more questions in basic as compared to standard. So roughly speaking, it's almost the same, not much of a difference. Okay, but the important point over here is that you have the flexibility to select any 16 questions from the total of 20 questions. So for example, if I'm attempting the standard paper, I can say that, okay, maybe I've studied real numbers very well and I find all real numbers questions easy. I can select all these 4 questions from real numbers and maybe all 3 questions from linear equations also. Coordinate geometry, 1 question can be done. Maybe trigonometry, I'm not very confident with. So I would do areas related to circles, 1 question, and then 2 questions here. How many questions have you attempted? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 questions attempted, which means you have to only select now 5 questions to attempt. You could select all 5 from triangles, or maybe you could select 2 from triangles, 3 from trigonometry, 3 from triangles, 2 from trigonometry. You are having a greater choice in this paper in terms of selection of the questions. And please remember, it is an MCQ type paper. Same weightage for all questions, whether it is a tough question or an easy question. Your aim is what? The section A, which has 20 questions, you must select 16 questions which are easiest for you to do and do that quickly. Okay. If you look at section B, which is of slightly higher difficulty level, little more logical understanding is required for this section. This was the distribution which was followed. So real numbers, again, you had 2 questions here, 3 questions in standard. So 2 in basic, 3 in standard. Polynomials, there was 1 question in the standard paper. For linear equations, 4 in basic, 3 in standard. Triangles, 5 in basic for the higher difficulty questions and 2 in standard. Coordinate geometry, there were 3 questions in the standard paper, none in the basic. Introduction to trigonometry, same number. Areas related to circles, 4 in basic, 3 in standard. Probability, you had 2 and 2. Okay. Again, these numbers can change. This is just an analysis of the sample paper which has been introduced. The numbers can change here and there, but what you need to understand is that again, you're having a choice that you can select out of the 20 questions, your favorite 16 questions, the 16 questions which are easiest for you, and do them accurately and do them fast. Steps, you need not write detailed steps over here. You can write only steps which are necessary for you to calculate the answer, and also write as many steps as would be necessary for you to check when you're going back and you're taking time to check whether you have done everything correct. That time you should have the necessary steps to see whether you have done it right. That's all, that's enough. All right. Let's look at section C next. Section C is very interesting. It's 2 questions based on case studies, and both in the basic as well as in the standard paper, There were two case studies, one of which was based on polynomials chapter and the second one based on coordinate geometry chapter. Case studies from these two chapters definitely would need to be given lot of importance. Polynomials and coordinate geometry. There are other chapters also from which you can get case studies. You could get from real numbers based on HCF and LCM. You could get on linear equations based on word problems. But as per the curriculum, it has been mentioned that only simple word problems would be asked from linear equations. That is an interesting thing which I noticed about this paper also, by the way. In the basic paper, there were word problems based questions which came as the 1 mark MCQs. But these were simpler ones, nothing like speed, distance, time type, or the upstream, downstream. Those type of questions were not there, at least as per this sample paper. And in the standard, hardly any word problem type questions came. It mostly had to do with number of solutions, the type of questions which came. Triangles, again, case studies are possible, but in this sample paper, both basic and standard, they have not asked. Usually based on similarity of triangles, you can find out case studies. In fact, last year's board exam sample paper for 2021 boards, that had questions based on triangles, case study questions. Introduction to trigonometry, I don't expect case studies to come, because if they ask you case study question over here, then they won't be able to ask much other questions. But mostly other types of questions are likely for trigonometry chapter. Areas related to circles, again, there is a chance of case study. Probability, because of the less weightage assigned to this chapter, the chance of case study coming is less. But nonetheless, be prepared for everything. You have to attempt your school exams too. You will be having some practice exams in school before your board exams. So do practice everything. We are just trying to analyze the sample paper here and see what is most likely, right? Okay, so this is the total number of questions which is asked from each chapter in both the basic and standard. That means the distribution of all 50 questions from these chapters. So you can see that coordinate geometry and triangles has been given a very good weightage for both. And even real numbers, which is generally considered an easier chapter, that also has been given more weightage. So do study these chapters properly. Make sure your concepts are clear so that you can solve this paper. I would like to discuss about time distribution. How do you manage your time across these sections in the paper? See, totally your aim is to get 40 marks in 1.5 hours, which is 90 minutes. That's your aim. That's your goal. How do you distribute your time for each of the sections? Now, in section A, your goal is to get the 16 marks out of total 20 questions. I would advise for section A, being the easier section, try to keep a time limit of 25 minutes for yourself. So when you're attempting any sample paper, when you're practicing these sections, please try to stick to this time of 25 minutes to get 16 marks in this particular section. That way you can improve upon your speed. Section B being a slightly tougher section as compared to section A, I would say you can spend up to 35 minutes over here in section B. So 35 minutes to get these 16 marks would be good enough. For section C, where you're attempting 2 case studies. So you're having 2 case studies, your goal is to get 8 marks. Each case study has 5 questions. So you could attempt 5 questions from one case study and 3 questions from the other case study, or you could attempt 4 and 4. Both options are there. For this, I would say spend maximum 15 minutes. Now, what's the total over here? 35 plus 25, 60, 60 plus 15, 75 minutes. You still have 15 minutes left to check your paper, to go back to questions which you may have left, to see whether you have guessed any answers anywhere and you can figure out the right answer. And in case some of you have not been able to attempt questions worth 40 marks, I would say take a chance and guess on few other questions, right? Do not leave it blank. You should have 40 questions attempted in your paper. If you have not attempted because you're not sure about these 40 questions, let's say you have attempted 35 questions in this time, and in that last 15 minutes, you're trying to solve 5 more questions. If you're not getting the answer, do a guess. It's an MCQ. Why should you lose the chance to get that mark, right? Okay. So what's the main takeaway from this discussion? First thing, your speed is important. And when will you be able to achieve speed? If your concepts are clear. All the formulae, all the applications must be crystal clear to you. Only then you will be able to solve the paper faster, right? Second thing, not more than 2 minutes per question. I want you to always try to do this whenever you're practicing. Each time you practice an MCQ question, try to follow this. Try to see whether you're able to solve the question within 2 minutes. Maybe while you're practicing, while you're studying, you may be taking more time because you're just learning the concepts. You may be initially taking 5 minutes, 6 minutes also sometimes. But your goal eventually must be to solve that question within 2 minutes, right? Third thing is guess wisely when you have not attempted the entire paper. So if you have not been able to attempt 40 questions from the paper, I want you to take time and make sure that you are guessing answers on the remaining, right? And the fourth thing would be that practice selection of questions. So when you're getting this 50 questions over there in the paper, your aim is not to show off to the teacher that you can solve a tougher question. There's no point of doing that. You're not going to get extra marks for doing a tougher question. Your aim is to select the easiest questions and solve them quickly. So select easiest questions and solve them fast. That is the main thing that you should be doing over here. All right. So thank you so much for watching this video. You can please put in your comments below. You can tell me what other videos you're expecting from me. I will be taking out time to also show you how to solve the paper, how to solve the tricky questions from these sample papers. And you can always get in touch with me on my Telegram channel or on my Instagram channel. All the details have been mentioned below. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.